Hey everyone, ready to dig into some seriously cool research. We're talking about how what we eat, our genes, even how we handle stress, all play a role in how long we live. And we've got this awesome study from Nature we're diving into today, and trust me, it's got some surprising stuff.
What has me so intrigued is they use this really diverse group of mice, like way more genetically diverse than your typical lab mice. So that means potentially this could apply to us humans a lot more than your average study,
Okay, so paint the picture for us. What did they actually do with these mice?
right? So imagine this, 960 female mice, all different genetically, split into 5 groups. Some are just eating freely, living their best mouse lives.
The lucky ducks.
Right. Then you've got some doing a bit of intermittent fasting, a couple days a week.
Like the mouse version of skipping breakfast.
Exactly. And the rest are on different calorie-restricted diets. And they tracked everything, their health, how long they lived, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so what did they find? Did the mice on the strictest diets live the longest?
Well, here's where things get interesting. Every single diet tweak, whether it was fasting or cutting calories outright, it did help the mice live longer. But get this, even the mice who fasted but didn't actually eat fewer calories overall, they lived longer too.
Wait, slow down. So you're saying it might not just be about how much you eat, but when you eat? Mind blown. I'm already rethinking my snacking schedule. But okay, they looked at genetics too, right? That's got to play a role.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting. While changing their diet did impact lifespan, their genes actually played a much bigger role.
Really? How much bigger are we talking?
Almost 3 times as much. So yeah, your genes could have a bigger say in your lifespan than the food you eat.
Wow, okay. So if our genes are that powerful, does what we eat even matter?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Hmm.
And this is where it gets kind of paradoxical. They found that while restricting calories did improve a lot of the usual health markers, things like blood sugar levels and energy expenditure.
So they were, like, healthier on paper.
Exactly. But those improvements didn't always mean they lived that much longer.
So even though they were healthier, it didn't always translate into a dramatically longer lifespan. Okay, there's definitely more to this dietary restriction thing than meets the eye. It's like this disconnect between being healthy and actually living longer.
Right. And it really challenges our assumptions about how these interventions work. Take the mice on the most extreme diet, the 40% calorie restriction. They did live the longest, but they also ended up losing muscle mass.
Almost like there's a trade-off. You get more years, but maybe not at peak performance.
Right.
I guess it becomes this question of, would you rather live longer, but with potential downsides, or just focus on being as healthy as possible for however long you've got?
It's a tough question. And this study throws another curveball. It's this idea of resilience. You see, they measured something called phenodelta, basically a bounce-back score.
Like how well they handled stress.
Exactly. How well they maintained their weight when things got tough. The higher the score, the more resilient. And guess what?
The mice with the higher bounce-back scores lived longer.
Bingo. It was the strongest predictor of how long they lived. Stronger even than diet.
Hold on, are you saying that the mice who held on to more weight, even with the diet changes, actually tended to live longer? That just seems backwards.
I know, right? It's totally counterintuitive. But it really points to this idea that being able to handle stress, to be resilient, might be a secret weapon for longevity, no matter what your diet's like.
This is fascinating, but how do you even measure that in people? Is it just about being able to handle tough situations?
It's definitely more nuanced than that, and there's no easy answer. But this research highlights just how important our ability to cope with stress, to be resilient, could be for living longer, healthier lives. Maybe even more important than what we eat.
Okay, so far we've got genetics playing a huge role, this whole health versus longevity thing, and now resilience is a factor. But wait, there's more, right? There was something about blood markers, too, holding clues to lifespan. What's the deal with that?
You're right, there's always more. They found that a simple blood test, one that measures something called RDW.
RDW?
Yeah, it stands for red blood cell distribution width, could actually predict how long those mice would live.
Okay, hold up. For those of us who didn't spend our morning reading blood work, what is RDW and why should we care?
Think of it like this. RDW measures the variety in the size of your red blood cells. A higher RDW, meaning there's a wider range of sizes, was linked to a shorter lifespan in these mice. And here's where it gets really interesting. Both the mice who fasted 2 days a week and those on that super strict 40% calorie restriction, they both had an unexpected jump in their RDW.
Wait, so the very things that were supposed to help them live longer actually increased a marker associated with a shorter lifespan. This aging thing is way more complicated than I thought.
It definitely is. What might be beneficial in some ways could have these unforeseen consequences in others.
Okay, now I need to know more about this RDW thing. What makes it go up in the first place? Can you do anything to lower it?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and unfortunately, we don't have all the answers yet. This study just uncovered this fascinating link. We need more research to understand the why and the how. But it's pretty wild, right? This little-known blood marker could be an indicator of lifespan in both mice and humans.
You're telling me. And of course, because this study is just full of surprises, they also found a connection between RDW and, you guessed it, genetics.
They did. Remember that chromosome 18 we talked about? The one linked to lifespan? Well, it turns out that inheriting a specific gene variant from that region, called the KCAS-T haplotype, was associated with both shorter lifespans and higher RDW in the mice.
So it's not just that our genes play a role, but that specific variations within those genes can actually influence how long we live and even the characteristics of our blood cells. It's like zooming in on the blueprint of aging here.
Exactly. And it shows just how complex this all is. Our responses to things like diet can be totally different depending on our genes. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, that's for sure.
Okay, my brain is officially full. We've covered so much ground: genetics, diet, resilience, and now this mysterious RDW. Before we go any further down these rabbit holes, can we just hit the pause button for a second and summarize what are the biggest takeaways from this study?
You're right, we've thrown a lot at you. Here's the bottom line. First, being healthy and living a long life, they're not always the same thing. Second, being able to handle stress, to be resilient, might be even more important to longevity than we thought. And finally, genetics play a huge role in all of this, especially when it comes to how our bodies respond to what we eat.
Okay, that helps to bring it all together. This deep dive has really challenged what I thought I knew about aging. It's not just about counting calories or finding that perfect diet. It's this whole dance between our genes, our environment, and how we deal with stress. And honestly, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, you're right. It really is just the tip of the iceberg. And the more we learn about this research, the wilder it gets. Like, remember that chromosome 18 we talked about? Well, the researchers were even able to pinpoint specific genes in that region that might be behind all these effects. One of them is called GARM1, and it's involved in things like red blood cell recycling and spleen size, which could explain the RDW connection.
So they're not just seeing these patterns, they're actually figuring out the mechanisms at play, down to the genetic level. That's incredible. So what does this mean for us regular folks? Should we be running out to get our genes mapped to figure out our perfect diets?
That's the dream, right? And as much as I love a personalized approach, it's not quite that simple yet. This research is amazing, but we're still in the early stages. We can't just translate these findings into specific diet plans based on your genes just yet. But it does highlight this really important point. We're all different. What works for one person might do nothing for another.
So are you saying we should just throw out everything we thought we knew about diet?
Hold on now. This study doesn't mean everything we know about healthy eating is wrong. It's not a free pass to ditch your veggies and eat cookies all day. But it does challenge some old ways of thinking. Like, there's this idea that dietary restriction works mostly by counteracting obesity. But remember, some mice in the study actually lived longer when they maintained their weight, even with the diet changes.
Yeah, that one really threw me for a loop. It seems so counterintuitive with all the messages we get about weight loss being the key to health.
Right. It's a head-scratcher for sure. But that's what makes this research so exciting. It tells us there's more to the story than just shedding pounds. There are other things at play that we might be missing when we focus just on weight loss. It's about finding that balance that works best for your body.
So it's not about being thin, it's about being resilient.
You got it. This study really points to the idea that our ability to handle those life stressors, to stay at a stable, healthy weight, to keep our immune system strong, it might be way more important than we realized.
Speaking of resilience, what about those mice on that super restrictive 40% calorie diet? They lived the longest, but they also had muscle loss and potential problems with their immune systems. Should that be a concern?
It's something to think about, for sure. Living longer sounds great, but we want to make sure those extra years are good years, right? This research brings up a really important point. There could be a sweet spot when it comes to dietary restriction, a balance between living longer and not sacrificing your health span along the way. We've got to figure out how to extend our lifespan without messing with our quality of life at the same time.
So quality over quantity to some extent. It's not just about tacking years onto our lives. It's about actually enjoying those years, right? This study makes you think differently about getting older.
Absolutely. This isn't about finding that one magic solution. It's about understanding how our genes, our environment, and our own individual responses to challenges all work together. It's complicated.
It sounds like there's still so much to learn, but this research feels like a huge step in the right direction.
I agree. It's a good reminder that we're always making new discoveries. This is just the beginning. There's a lot more to uncover.
So what's next? Where do we go from here?
More research, of course. We need to dive deeper into these genetic factors, really unpack this concept of resilience, and figure out what's really going on with RDW.
And maybe one day we'll be able to develop truly personalized treatments and interventions based on our own genetic blueprints.
Personalized medicine for aging, that would be incredible. But for now, focusing on stress management and building resilience through things like exercise and a healthy lifestyle, that's a good place to start.
It's like they say, control the controllables, right? We can't change our genes yet, but we can build a lifestyle that supports resilience and well-being overall. We've talked about genetics, diet, resilience, but I want to circle back to this RDW thing one more time. It seems like a really important piece of the puzzle.
It's definitely a key player. And remember, this isn't just some abstract concept. RDW is already used in hospitals and clinics to help predict mortality risk.
That's right. So for our listeners who might be a little freaked out about their RDW levels right now, what can they do? If someone has a high RDW, are there things they can do to lower it?
That's the million-dollar question, and there isn't a clear answer yet. We're just starting to understand what affects RDW and how to change it. We need more research before we can give specific recommendations.
But even just knowing about it, knowing that it's linked to lifespan, that's a big deal, right?
Huge. Just being aware of RDW and what it could mean is a major step forward. It gives us something to focus on, something to investigate.
It's like RDW is this whole new world of aging research. It's exciting and a little intimidating at the same time.
It really is a whole new world, and it just goes to show how much we don't know about aging.
It's like RDW is this little whisper in our blood, telling us secrets about how long we might live. And the more we listen, the better we might be able to understand those secrets and maybe even do something about them. But for now, it seems like the big takeaway from all of this is this idea of resilience. If we want to live longer, healthier lives, we need to get better at bouncing back from stress and challenges.
Absolutely. And it really shifts our focus away from those restrictive diet ideas, which, honestly, who can keep up with those long term? It's about looking at the whole picture, taking care of ourselves on all levels.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally. It's like building a strong foundation. So no matter what life throws at you, you can handle it.
I love that. So let's talk action steps. What can our listeners start doing today to build up that resilience, no matter what their genes are or what they had for lunch?
Well, stress management is huge. And I'm not talking about just lighting some scented candles and hoping for the best. We need to find those healthy coping strategies that work for us, whether that's exercise, meditation, getting out in nature, or spending time with loved ones. Whatever helps you unwind, make it a priority, a non-negotiable part of your routine.
Those are great, but those are things people hear all the time, right? So given what we've learned from this study, are there any more specific recommendations you can make? Anything that stood out to you from the research?
Well, this study really drove home the importance of maintaining a healthy body composition as we age, especially when it comes to muscle mass. So adding in some strength training a few times a week on top of making sure you're getting enough protein, that could make a big difference.
That makes sense, especially since we saw that muscle loss in the mice on the most restrictive diet. It's like our bodies need a certain level of strength to really thrive in the long run.
Exactly. And losing muscle is just a natural part of getting older, so it's something we need to be proactive about.
Strength training, stress management, anything else.
Don't forget about your immune system. This study showed just how crucial a strong immune system is for longevity. Eating nutritious foods, prioritizing sleep, and minimizing exposure to toxins, those are all essential for keeping your defenses in tip-top shape.
It really is about a holistic approach to aging, isn't it? It's not just about living longer, it's about living well, feeling vibrant and full of energy.
Exactly. It's about maximizing not just our lifespan, but our health span. And that takes a multi-pronged approach. You've got to look at all aspects of your well-being.
Wow, this has been an amazing deep dive. We've explored groundbreaking research that really challenges how we think about aging. And we've uncovered some fascinating factors like this whole RDW thing and the power of resilience that could change how we approach living longer, healthier lives.
And it's important to remember this is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn, and studies like this are opening up new avenues for understanding how we age and what we can do about it.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, if you're feeling inspired, keep that curiosity going. Read the research. Maybe learn more about your own genetics. Try out different things to boost your resilience. The journey to a longer, healthier life is different for everyone. But armed with knowledge and a little curiosity, we can all unlock that longevity potential.
And remember, it's not just about the number of years, it's about making those years count.
Beautifully said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.